G'day guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to do a rig review on my Chop 200 series Landcruiser. So guys, I've been wanting to do this review for a long time now, but I wanted to make sure I was using the vehicle and give, I guess, more of an accurate review on how it's going and what I think of the setup, basically. There's a heap of common questions that I get about the vehicle. Would I do this again, or would I go through the process of building another one? Why didn't I go a 79 series? And why didn't you buy a Chev or a Dodge or an American vehicle? And I'm going to answer those questions towards the end of this episode, so stay tuned. There's a few more things coming up as well, in particular packing to head north, going up the Cape in a few weeks. So I'm going to show you exactly how I pack my 200 here to head away up north and the stuff that I think that I need to take to get away and have a good touring trip. So if you haven't yet subscribed to this channel, jump on the Matt28 Instagram, Facebook pages so you don't miss those couple episodes. And then yeah, you'll see me up the Cape in this, cruising around and giving it some good use, and yeah, basically stay tuned. So guys, let's get started on the review. This is a 2018 build. It's a GXL Landcruiser, Toyota Landcruiser, and it's a 200 series. And I've basically had it converted from a wagon to a dual cab. So I'll talk a little bit more about that and the process of going through that. But we'll start up the front and we'll do all the external stuff I've got on the car, all the modifications externally. And then I'll show you internal, so the interior in the cab, and then inside the canopy as well. I've gone for a TJM T13 Outback bull bar here. And the reason I chose this bar is just I liked how it worked a little bit better aesthetically with the car. It followed the lines quite well, and I just colour matched it to the vehicle, which is a glacier white. I put a TJM 12,000 pound winch in as well, seemed to fit pretty well on this bar. I've used it a couple times, nothing on a major recovery. Something I would find as a disadvantage is the length of the rope, and I think a lot of people find that issue. If you've got a tree really far away and you need to recover yourself, you just might need that extension piece between. But other than that, it seems like it's got plenty of grunt. It's a wireless remote and a wired remote that I can use. And I'll show you where it's isolated and how it's hooked up to the battery when we go through the 12 volt stuff in the vehicle a little bit later in this episode. To fill in the front here, I've got the steady LED spotlights, and they're a Type X Pro. And then in conjunction with the light bar up the top there, which is a combination and spot light bar, it sort of just fills in it for good night driving and things like that, and gets all the areas that the headlights don't. The GME aerial, this is a bit of a shorter one, little less distance, but better in mountainous sort of country, a lower DBI. And then I've got a longer one, and it's better for touring long roads and stuff, especially if you've got a bit of a convoy. The only reason I run the two is basically because this one fits in the shed a little easier, and then I can use an Allen key, switch it out with a long one for longer trips when we're touring. Come around the side of the vehicle, tyres and wheels. I'll start with the tyres. These are a 295/70 R17, so they fit on a size 17-inch rim. A little bit bigger than stock, so a stock tyre for the 200 series is a 285/70/17. It's basically between a 33 and a 34-inch tyre. The only reason I wanted to go slightly bigger is it's great for looks and everything, but I need as much clearance as possible with this because I have converted it and stretched it slightly. So as much clearance I can get off the ground is handy. They're a Nitto trail grappler and a mud terrain. So the reason I've gone these is I've run them before. I've run a heap of mud trains before, and the Nittos just seem to last really well. I got about 80,000 Ks out of a set of tyres on a Ford Ranger I had before this car. As far as the stiffness of the sidewalls, the grip they have on different terrains, in the sand, it just feels like a really good all-round tyre. There's heaps on the market now, but the fact that they don't go loud after a few thousand Ks is a really big bonus. And I've found that with other mud terrains, that they get pretty noisy, fair bit of vibration on the road. So a good tyre for that that doesn't seem to go so hard. ROH Vapor rims there, they're the 17-inch. You'll see those a lot on 200 series or vehicles that are quite heavy. And the reason you'll see Vapors is because there's not a lot of choice for a load rating rim that's as high as these. So these are a 1500 kilo load rated rim. And because I've upgraded my GVM, you need to choose something that's going to handle the weight and be legal. So this is in the mix of those, and it just was more eye-catching for me, so I went the RH Vapors. Down in behind there is that you really can't see, but I'll show a close-up. The suspension that I've gone for the vehicle is a Fox Shocks. It's a 2.0 kit, and it gave it about a 2-inch lift. It's a coil-over shock at the front, independent suspension, independent front. I'm really, really happy with how it rides. The rear springs are a coil spring, and they're rated to 500 kilo. Again, pretty happy with how they ride. Something that you need to be wary of when you get your shocks is how much protection you've got on your shaft. Now, these shafts are hardened chrome on the Fox Shocks, and even though it's quite a durable material, you think about rocks at about 100 clicks an hour on the dirt and how hard they're hitting the shaft. I've had the issue of it damaging a shaft, and then the shocks start leaking because it's damaged the seal. So I've got some boots on there now that I run, just to protect them a little bit more, but have a really good think about how they're going to be protected, because it's like bullets under there with all the rocks flying at your really nice expensive suspension. Because I did lift it, I've changed my upper control arms to a Black Hawk upper control arm, and I've also got a diff drop kit from Cal Off-Road in here as well, and that just helps the diff sit in a nicer position, and any lift you do, it tends to help it realign itself a bit better. So let's keep moving down. I got the clear view mirrors. They're nothing brand new. I actually got them second hand off a bloke who drove them for a little bit with a caravan. They are adjustable and really, really good for when you're towing a boat or any load, because my canopy is really wide and you need to be able to see around the canopy. Really cool split of mirrors. One's like a convex or a concave, I'm not sure which one, but you can see more in a blind spot with the mirror. It takes a little bit to get used to, but once they're set up, really, really good. They go in as well, not electric for these ones, but you can push them in, or if they hit a branch on the side of a track, they will push in. All right, we'll move down. So you'll see my awning up on the side here. I've just got the Dachi Eclipse. That's the Gen 2 180 degree awning. So it basically comes out to the side of the vehicle. It's not the full 270, it's just 180. Comes to the front and the side. Plenty of shade. I wish I had it now actually, the sun's just come out and it was raining just before because we're in the tropics. So that's why the vehicle's a little bit wet, which is good because I didn't wash it too well. Now it's getting a bit of a wash as well. So yeah, good to get out of the sun and good to get out of the rain as well. That's on the Rhino rack, and that's a Pioneer platform rack. It basically works as a track system, so you can put in eye bolts and things like that, tie things down easier. Really, really happy with the rack. I've fixed a few things to it in different ways, and it seems to be putting up with the weight and the off-road and the corrugations. I believe the new ones have a system you can actually run the wiring through the rack as well, which I think that would be even better, you know. Some of my wiring's one underneath, but this is the backbone system along the edge here. Supposed to offer a little bit more support, I guess, for any load you have on your roof. And it looks really well, sits nice and close, pretty slimline for the top of the vehicle. All right, we'll keep going. So this is, I guess, the biggest change that you'll see between a wagon and a Chop 200. So the original wheel would sit here, and because I've extended the vehicle, extended the chassis, now the wheel sits back a bit more. So you can imagine a wagon would have the wheel sitting here, and then the end of the wagon would finish probably around the end of my canopy here. So RWV up here in north in Cairns have done the conversion to a dual cab and the GVM upgrade, and they've done an absolute cracker job at fabricating the cab here, which can be a really, really hard thing to do, matching the paint, fabricating it so it looks factory, and I think they've done an absolute awesome job with a custom rear window in there. Some people use a window out of another single cab or dual cab, but these guys get a custom window made and fit it in, which looks bloody awesome. All right, we'll keep going. So canopy and tray, this is probably the main reason you do it, is to get a canopy and a tray and get all that space on the vehicle. I have gone with NQ Works, which are up here in Cairns as well. Liam Edridge, that's his company. He also runs Kimberley to Cape, and his engineering, his skill on building his canopies and trays is absolutely phenomenal. It's really, really interesting to see it come together, how it's designed and then how it's built. So yeah, I chose Liam to work with, and he did an absolute unreal job with my canopy and my tray setup. I went for an 800 wide canopy and 1200 wide deck. Now the reason I went 1.2 meters on my deck is so I could get a quad fitting on the back of it and then still have space to store stuff in the front here. I had to go about 800 in the canopy so I could fit the fridge slide that I chose, which was a Clearview 220, and get the biggest fridge possible. So 800 canopy, 1200, so that's a 2 meter tray. And I had to think really carefully on how I wanted to extend the chassis and how big I wanted to extend it. Basically, I just chose 700 mil for my extension. So they pretty much cut the chassis, weld in 700 mil worth of chassis, and extend the diff back to, I guess, be in line under the canopy. Most commonly, they're about a 650 extension that a lot of people do, and a lot of conversion mobs do. The reason I went 700 was I wanted a 2 meter tray. I knew that 650 was successful as far as turning circle of the vehicle. I knew that 650 worked off-road. There wasn't too much problems with ground clearance over spoon drains and things like that. And I got to choose, so I basically chose to go the 700, get a 2 meter tray, which enabled my tray to finish pretty much behind my tow ball, and that means I had good access at the back of the vehicle still. And I was able to centralise my wheels a little bit better under the weight, which would be my quad and all the stuff in my canopy. That's why I went those dimensions, and Liam was happy to fab all that up and make it work and pretty much build this. The canopy's got a couple boxes, or the tray, sorry, has got a couple boxes in front here, boxes at the back. I got a water tank underneath that it's a custom tank. It's a plastic tank and it's 100 litres. Filler is on the other side, so I can show you that. Keep coming around. I wanted tray sides and I wanted them removable. So these tray sides are removable, but one of the biggest things is this piece is removable as well. So when I want to put my quad on, there's nothing here. I've got the full 1200 deck space to put the quad on. These are removable, and I've got now the 1200 deck space. It's for the drop slides to be able to connect onto. So really smart thinking there, and I was happy with how that worked. So keep coming around, guys, and I got the ladder rack on the back. It's because I don't have a back canopy section, and I use my tinny. I put my tinny up on the roof there. I did a bit of an episode on how I put my tinny on the roof, so I'll put that at the end of this video and you can click through and see how I built that. These are all adjustable on the rack. I've got one up the front there as well, so the wider the tinny, that you can adjust to suit. At the back here, I think it's finished off pretty well, the tray. I've got the drawer in here. I opted for a 1200 long drawer, and it's basically for my recovery gear. This is a table that clips onto the side of the vehicle as well, in case you want to have a bit of extra space for when you're cooking, or I put the barbie up there, the Weber and stuff, and it works really well, and that fits in well with the drawers. Basically the drawers are just divided up with these dividers, and I've got all my recovery gear and extension leads and things like that, hopefully I don't fall back into a tree and I can't recover myself because this is jammed against a tree. That's the only thing I kept thinking about, putting recovery gear, all my recovery gear in the back here. But I do have a winch on the front so I can pull myself away from the tree. So yeah, that's the rear drawer. One thing that he did really well, that Liam did with this drawer, is it's not actually rails externally in the tray. That's all built in its own cavity. So dust, water, it will get on the seal, but it won't get into the drawer and into the runners where it gets stuck. And I've seen it before. I've been up to the Cape with mates and they've had runners just full of red dirt, full of sand, and they lock up and they don't open. So really cool enclosed case. Takes a bit more space, maybe a smaller drawer, but definitely worth it. Incorporated the sensors from the factory as well into the back here, which is pretty awesome. Underneath where the factory spare wheel used to be, I basically put in a ARB Frontier tank, and it's 180 litres. So that combined with the 90 litre factory tank that you get enables me for 270 litres. So really, really good to get over that 1000K mark and skip some of those fuel stations that you just don't want to fill up at or are pretty expensive. That fits in really well. It's big and it hangs down a little bit, but I've scarred it up a few times on some rocks and it seems to definitely be pretty durable and put up with the punishment. I'll talk about my chassis really quick while I'm back here so you can see it. First thing is I've had a chassis black put all over the chassis of the vehicle, and that's done from a mob up here, Roll & Graph Auto. It's basically a protectant to keep any corrosion out of the chassis, stone chips, things like that, and it's really good. It's almost like a tar that goes on, which means the red dirt sticks to it, but it protects the material and the chassis really, really well. The GVM upgrade I've done on this is 3.9 tonne. So that's what the vehicle can weigh, and my towing is 3.5 tonne. Reverse camera sitting up under here is from factory as well. They've just set it up under there pretty nicely. So all those little things that make it a bit more luxury when you're driving is I've kept with this tray, which is bloody awesome. All right, we'll keep going around. So this side's pretty much the same. The only thing you'll see different is my water filler down the back here. That's the gravity fed water filler. I've also got a pump in here, which I'll show you. And it enables a bit more pressured water from the 100 litre tank that's up underneath. The snorkel I went with, guys, is the Armax Safari snorkel, and it just seemed to allow the most air as possible. There was some good reviews about the 200s, getting some really good airflow. So yeah, went with the Safari Armax, and just one little upgrade that I've done on it is the filter head here. So this is a slide out panel, and you can put in a filter, and especially because the 200 series Toyota factory airboxes can have a few issues with taking on some dust, it's really good to have that extra bit of insurance. I was using the sock, but instead of having greasy air filter oil over your thing, it's just going to be on the little slide in here, which is really good. And something you've probably noticed up there is the max tracks. I've just got a set of 4 up there. The reason I've got them on the side, which I'm not a massive fan of, but it's so I can get my rooftop tinny over the top. It sits quite low, and I don't have a massive gap to put anything. So yeah, I've got the max tracks up on the side there, which is still pretty handy, getting on and off to use out in the tracks. So this is my 800 wide Canopy. Most of my tools and spare parts, gears, bolts, any of that sort of stuff. So it's pretty stocked, this drawer. Anything I keep as far as like filters for my snorkel head, yeah, hoses, angle grinders, any of my battery type tools and spare bolts and electrical stuff I keep in here. So this drawer is a little bit shorter than the half width of the Canopy because I've got a 170 amp hour battery sitting in behind it, and that's a kick-ass AGM battery. Pretty good, and I've been pretty happy with it. I'd probably go to a lithium next, but when I did all this, lithiums were just really, really expensive, and I didn't know a lot about them. So the battery's in there. I'll go through all my 12 volt stuff in a minute. On the other side, I've got my fridge. So come around and check out the fridge on the slide. So I've gone with a Dometic 75 litre, and it's a dual zone. And this is on the Clearview 220 drop down slide. Reason I went chest freezer is I liked the space as far as being able to stock as much crap I can in there. I can freeze one side and keep the other side going as fridge. I can do fridge on both. It's pretty efficient at drawing power, so that's the reason I went it. I wanted to use the space as much as possible, so this was the option for me. Up here I've got a drawer, or not a drawer, sorry, a shelf, and that's adjustable. I've just got my oven on there, and I can put a couple other bits and pieces for storage up there, so pretty handy to have that going up and down depending on what fridge I had in there. All right, I think next we'll check out the interior of the vehicle and have a look in the cockpit. So this is the cockpit of the vehicle, guys, or the interior at the front here. And I've tried to just set it up to be as comfortable as possible. You get so much space, and that's one of the biggest reasons of doing a 200 series like this, is the space in the cab. So I've just got an iPad holder that I run all my maps on. Phone holders up here. This is my UHF, which is just on a magnet piece there. Plugs in so it can be removed completely. Other than that, I haven't really changed too much other stuff. I've got some wet seat neoprene covers on here. That's pretty good for, you know, just looking after the seat covers a bit, and the center console cover as well. A few switches up underneath here for the lights, the spotlights, the driving lights, and then also my Red Arc Tow Pro, which is my brake controller and adjuster. So yeah, it's definitely a comfortable rig to drive, and on the suspension setup and you know, having it set up with a train canopy, it seems like it's a really, really good touring vehicle. So plenty of space in the back as well. So I'll spin around and get you to look at the back and how I've done the seats. I've actually done something a little bit different. I'll meet you around the back there. So on the back here, I've actually removed the third seat. So I've just got these two which are stuck together, and they come up. It gives me access to the back here. So plenty of room to put some things back there. And on the other side where I've removed the seat, I've put a bit of a pantry and an extra fridge. So we'll go around to that side and have a look. One more thing of these seats that are really cool is you can actually adjust forward and back, the slide of the seats. So wherever the thing is here, I can actually slide them forward and still have a big gap back there. Most of the time it's my little dog, Donnie, back here, and there is hair absolutely everywhere. So I gave it a bit of a vacuum just for this, but it's usually a rug back here because Donnie just goes nuts in the back there. So on this side, guys, I removed my third seat, which was a single seat, just unbolted it out. And I'm no carpenter, but I just knocked up a little bit of a pantry. Because I've only got a smaller canopy, or a short canopy, I thought this would be a great use of space. And it's just drawers for food, all the condiments and things like that, cutlery, and it holds the fridge on the top here, which is strapped down at the front and rear. Mostly this is just for drinks, water. You can grab it while you're driving in the vehicle, or your wife can, because it would be dangerous if I did. So grab drinks out of here, and all the food and stuff can just go in my main fridge, my 75 litre at the back there. The awning sits over the top, so when you're camping, it's really, really easy to use and get to. All right, so now we'll go through the 12 volt in the vehicle, guys, and I did all this myself. I'm pretty switched on with it, I guess, and I've done a lot of research and grew up sort of with a few skills about 12 volt. Basically, I've got at the front here, this is my crank battery on this side, and my second on the other side. I'm pretty much charging the second on the other side here through a 40 amp Red Arc 40 amp BC-DC charger, and that's sitting in behind the grill here. It's got a solar input as well, so I can get some solar into that battery if we're camping. I've put MIDI fuses between each of the lines here, and that's 105 amp hour deep cycle is my second there. And then the crank is actually the original that comes in the vehicle. You hear mixed reviews about it, but I haven't really had an issue yet. So knock on wood that it stays good for the next couple of months, and I'll probably upgrade it to a better cranking battery in the future. Currently, I've just got a secondary fuel filter, and it's a pre-filter. So before it goes into my main fuel filter, there's a, you know, it's filtering out any of the crap that comes through the fuel. Any water can be trapped there before it throws it into the motor. So I've put that on. That's a must, I think, especially traveling remotely and especially traveling up north. I've also got a catch cam, which you won't be able to see, but that's tucked in behind the grill here, nice and neat. And the tube for that runs down. I can drain it down under the vehicle pretty easy. So filter every 5,000, I drain it and replace if I think necessary, or 10,000 you can replace. You just need to keep an eye on that bulb and make sure you're draining it. The catch can, I think it's a fair few thousand Ks out of it before you need to replace them, but I just drain it the same time I do my filter as well, and just keep an eye on it, on what's happening in there. So from here, I've tried to keep everything out of my engine bay, and basically I've run it to a panel in the back of my cab. One thing going up and doing wiring on cars, it gets very, very messy if everything's running off your batteries and everything's right there with fuses. So I've tried to run everything back at the other side of the cab. So I'll give you a look at that, how I've done that panel, and that's for everything from my crank battery and my deep cycle battery is run back at the panel there. Just one more thing, I said I'd show my isolators up here as well for my winch, and it's a good thing to have in case something goes wrong and it keeps spooling. You need to be able to shut it off, so my isolator lives there. So we'll go look at the 12-volt panel that I've put into the back of the cab. So basically guys, back here, it's a little hard to see, it's in behind the seat, and we've got all our camera gear and stuff in here now. But I've ran everything from the engine bay down through, in through the firewall, and then down under all my step covers and back to this panel. So I've got a fuse box here that I run my tow pro off, I run my spotlights off, I've got power back here for the fridge as well. I also run relays and everything back here, and a buzz bar for all my negatives. So it's just a handy spot to look when anything goes wrong, and I know that I've used proper cable from the front to the rear here under the side steps. So that's how I've done it. People would choose differently, but it seems to work really, really well and be convenient. Instead of being in the engine bay tucked down in, I can just knock these seats forward and work on it right here, which is pretty handy, and have 12-volt power, voltmeter up the top here as well. So it seems to work for me the best. On the other side there, I've just got a fire extinguisher, and then in that cavity I was talking about before is where the first aid kits live. And there's a little 100-watt inverter that comes standard with the vehicle as well, that they've tucked in nicely in the back there as well, in the existing wheel arch that from factory. So that's the 12-volt for the interior of the vehicle, and all my switches run through that. I'll show you the 12-volt now in the canopy side. 12-volt in the canopy here. Done all this with myself as well. I've chose to go the Red Arc Manager 30 system. I can pretty much see everything that's happening through my screen here, as far as how many amps I'm using for my lights, or for my oven, or for my fridge, or anything that's happening, how much charge I have, how many days I have left. Since I've installed this, a few new products have come out that I'm really keen on, but this works really well and it's simple. I didn't have a lot of room. My biggest struggle in having a short canopy like this was space. So I had to think about my battery, which is pretty big and bulky. I had to think about the Manager 30, which is pretty large. And also I had to think about my inverter, when I wanted to put that and where to put it, and to run all the wires as well. So as far as trying to get it nice and neat, I've done as much research as possible and got some ideas, and this is how I've set it up. So Manager 30 lives at the top here, all my fuses here, and I've just labelled them with a labeler basically, so nothing too professional. My inverter, 240 plugs over there to charge anything, laptop, drone batteries, my battery tools, Makita tools, things like that. Screen lives here. Here's a switch for my lights, which are through core lighting and fully dimmable, and also changed to a dual colour, to orange as well on both sides. Some SIG plugs, USB ports. I hardly ever use these, sometimes to do some charging from the USB, but there's hardly anything that's a 12-volt socket anymore, so I'd probably just use a USB one in future. I've got solar input here, and then I've got everything on isolators. So I can isolate solar here, turn it on and off. I can isolate my charge input to the canopy, so I can completely cut it off from the vehicle. Isolator for boat winch as well. That's just to isolate any power that's going onto my roof, to plug in a little winch that I use for my tinny. It's a 3,000 pound winch that I bolt on up there, and there's an Anderson plug that it plugs into. So that's an isolation for that if anything happens. But if you want more info on that, I'll put the link at the end of this video, and it's for the tinny, rooftop tinny video episode that I did. And in the next couple videos, I'll show you that, that setup of it sitting on the roof and how I use it. It's a wireless remote and really, really handy. And the last one is to isolate all my accessories. So if I don't want anything running off the battery in here, I can isolate that as well. Most of the stuff's hidden, all the wiring. I'll show you a little bit of footage now while I was installing my inverter. I actually installed it over on the other side under my fridge slide, and used some nut certs to sit that in the canopy and sealed them up really well so that didn't take on any dust. And then I ran an extension cord from that so I can use it on that side. And it also runs to my 240 plug on this side, so I can charge from this side. I've got my little switch down here, which is just inverter on and off, so it saves me trying to switch it on from under the fridge. I can just switch it from here with a little control. And then I've got quite a large isolator here. There wasn't much room to sit it up there because I didn't have large space to run those wires. So here's my isolator for my inverter. If anything goes wrong or there's a surge, it'll pop that isolator. So that's the 12 volt back here. On the other side, I've already showed you the oven, which it runs to and runs that. My fridge is on the other side. I don't use too much power. The battery, I said, is 170 amp hour AGM from Kick-Ass, and it's been pretty good. It puts up with a lot of vibration, a lot of corrugation, so that's why I chose that battery. I would definitely look to do a lithium though, next time I had a battery choice. I think that's about it for the vehicle, guys. That's as much detail as I can think of for now anyway. If there's anything I miss or you want to know more about something, definitely put it in the comments and ask me, or post to one of my social media pages and I can tell you a little bit more about specific things in detail. The final things that I wanted to answer was a couple questions about what I commonly get asked, and no doubt I'm still going to get asked every time I go touring. But first thing was, would I do this process again? As much as I poured my heart and soul into this, I would definitely do it again because I loved every minute of it. 100% I'd go through the process. It looks like a big process, but if you enjoy building rigs and you have the time to do the research, definitely I'd go through the process again. The other question I get asked, why didn't you choose a 79 series? As much as I love the look of a 79 series and the durability of them, you know, just them as a beastie vehicle, I just couldn't get past the interior and the comfort of a 79. It's got a single turbo as well. These V8s have a twin turbo, and the fact that I would have had to change multiple things as far as how the setup of the vehicle was, the wheel track, the extension. If you've looked into 79s, you know there's those few modifications you need to make them ride really well. A lot of people are changing the interior, and I just didn't want to do that. I wanted something spacious, comfy, and that's why I went the 200. And it is that little bit more expensive, but I think it's a really, really good choice for the weight distribution, towing, things like that. So lastly, if you're towing so much, why didn't you just get a Chev, or why didn't you get an American vehicle? And that's a really good question, and it's a good point. I think it's valid for people who are towing a lot. It's a really good idea to look into those vehicles. Their towing capacity and the GCM of them is pretty large. I haven't had any good experiences off-road with a Chev or with I haven't been in a Dodge, but I have driven a GMC. I used to own a GMC. My brother drives a GMC, and we've never experienced any good things off-road as far as how it drives on corrugations. When you're remote, how you get the parts, is it easy to fix in remote areas and get those parts. Toyota is a well-known brand here in Australia, and you can get the parts pretty easy. Plus you can do really, really big GVMs upgrades on these things now, and it's almost probably the most ultimate touring vehicle for traveling remote off-road and towing, so you get a bit of both. I think with the American vehicles, you're really just getting them for the comfort and for the towing. Off-road and their turning circle, just, I don't know, it doesn't do it for me. And that's the other thing with the 79 series, their turning circle still wasn't as good as a 200 series. And even when you start to do those extensions, so that's something great for the 200. So there you go, guys. That's why I ended up going with a 200 series. 100% I'd do it again. If I missed anything, please comment about it. But other than that, cheers. I'll see you on the next one.